All right. Hello, people.
Morning, sir.
All right. It is a rainy day, possibly for everyone today. So anybody here been receiving any kind of power cuts or delays, technical delays? Or are we holding strong? No, nobody. That's good. Every time I hear the lightning or the thunder, I just say a prayer for Digicel we have here saying, please hang in there, Digicel. All right. uh, all right. Let's see. You guys recently had what was it? Was it a crit or was it an interim that you had last for Design Studio?
We have final crit tomorrow.
Oh, it's tomorrow. That's interesting. Well, you're presenting in person or is it hybrid?
In person.
So you guys need to take your umbrellas then. Well, are you guys going to be printing or showing digital presentations?
All hand-drawn work. All the sheets are hand-drawn and rendered. We're supposed to be. Anyway, sir.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Okay. Are you guys allowed to use the computer for your other assignments? Or you don't know yet?
Not sure yet, sir.
Not sure yet. Okay. All right, cool. All right. Well, welcome again to another DDM lecture. The last couple classes we spoke about image size, right? And there is even a class activity that is now open. And I open it before class. I'm going to try to see if I can look at some of the things to help you guys out with that. But I'm going to promise to make an effort to stay within my time limit this time around. Because last time I guess we had some technical issues, so the class went a bit overboard. So we'll see if we get around to that, right? Today we're talking about artwork, right? Vector artwork. And last time you guys did a exercise using Illustrator. How did you guys find that?
Was that right, sir?
Anybody found Illustrator what's the word? Challenging? No? That's good. I remember those profiles. Every once in a while I go over those profiles that we created in the first class. I mean, I see a lot of fans of Photoshop. I see some people that want to learn Illustrator as well. So I'm hoping that you guys are having fun with that. All right. Okay, give me a sec here to let me switch my monitors around. so I don't get any pop-ups. Alrighty. Let's make this primary display. All right. Well, I'm getting some rain behind me where I am. So, you know, my office is a semi-outdoor space. That's the best place to work, surrounded by nice trees and cool breeze and that kind of stuff. But the downfall to that is that when things get windy and rainy, it can get a little hairy. So let's see how the weather holds up. So you guys got introduced to vector artwork, right? And I want to share something with you guys for just a couple minutes about Illustrator, because Illustrator is supposed to be a very special friend to you guys, especially during CSA. And some persons miss that opportunity for that friendship, so to speak, because we tend to default a lot to using Photoshop to do everything, right? But what we're going to be promoting here is you guys learning when to use what program. So I have this interesting little I'm only going to share like a piece of it, because it is on the class website for you guys to watch the rest. But you know, sometimes I say, you know, you should go and watch something. Not everybody might watch it. So I want to share a little bit of this, a little bit of history with the Illustrator. A second here. Let me just change my output device so that you guys can get the raw audio.
Illustrator really changed things way back. It started making the computer a real graphics tool.
I think I just saw the future, and it just was really exciting to me. I just wanted to learn it.
You've never seen anything do something like this before. You can make changes and things would happen instantaneously. So it's like magic.
So I'm the classically trained graphic designer. I did rub down text. That's sort of like bear skins and stone knives. I used French curves and rulers.
Are you guys using some of that now to do your presentation for tomorrow?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, let's watch on. Let's see how Illustrator impacts this type of working.
The process of getting camera-ready art was pretty involved back in the day. You had multiple elements.
This is a really old piece that was done before computers.
It was really time intensive. You would sketch out a comp with all the measurements, and then you'd lay out your page. Copy had to be spec'd, what kind of typeface.
Okay, just so that you guys have this in context. Comp means composition. So you would lay out your composition, right? Typeface means the font. We call it font, but the professional word is typeface. So, you know, sometimes when you're doing a document and you say, hey, what font are you using? Times New Roman, Comic Sans, world's most hated font. But the right word is typeface. And the word copy, that is a word that meant, think of copy in the graphic design world as what a schematic design is to the architectural world. If somebody is asking you to do a flyer, a brochure, or any kind of artwork, they're supposed to give you a copy. And copy is more like a brief. Right? That's more like a brief. What information is to be on this flyer? You know, what tone should it be? You know, things like that. So when you refer to as copy, that's what it means. It's kind of like a brief that you get from the client.
The process of getting camera-ready art was pretty involved back in the day. You had multiple elements.
This is a really old piece that was done before computers.
It was really time intensive. You would sketch out a comp with all the measurements, and then you'd lay out your page. Copy had to be spec'd. What kind of typeface are you going to use? What point size?
The text was spit out from a typesetter, which was cut up and pasted onto the boards.
One page of set type, it might take a day or 2 days to actually do.
The rapidograph.
You know what repeatographs are, that pen that always clogs up and spits.
It stains clothes, it stains your hands.
The rapidograph decides to explode. Anything could go wrong.
When your hand is just doing the final little touch and all of a sudden you jerk and it's ruined and you'd have to start all over again.
I'm just so pleased that I never have to struggle through that again.
So you guys are currently maybe going through this struggle, right? Anybody using repeatographs?
About to.
Well, hold your hand very steady, all right?
That's good.
All right, let's continue.
John Warnock always had a vision.
So I'm going to skip through a little bit of this because we don't have to watch the full thing. I just want you to get what where illustration revolutionized the illustration industry.
John Warnock and Chuck Geschke invented PostScript because there was something missing in the industry. There was bitmap typefaces and bitmap images. There was lots of languages driving printers, so they wanted to come up with the universal language which would drive a printer of any make, any model, now and into the future. And that was an amazing vision.
If it wasn't for PostScript, there would be no desktop publishing. It sort of opened the doors that you were able to produce layouts and magazines.
PostScript was a page description language, and you used it.
Okay, guys. So this is the important thing to know. I know that some of you are torn between preparing for your design studio, but I'm only asking for like 15 minutes of your time just to kind of understand where we're going in DDM, and then I promise you I will let you go to finish your design studio. All right, so that's a deal I want us to shake on. Okay, what is a bitmap? Let's spoke about that a couple times. What's a bitmap, guys? Ah, can't stick to that specific type. Hello.
Sir, I have no idea.
All right, I'll take that answer for the entire class. A bitmap is a raster image. Remember we spoke about that, but we just didn't call it bitmap because, well, it is not really known as, I mean, it's like an old school word that you don't use anymore, you know? But a bitmap is an image that's made up of pixels. Can you guys see the pixels in this image?
Yes, sir.
Right, so this is what used to exist in the original days of computer. What do I mean by that? Meaning it was all pixels. Now, Illustrator revolutionized the graphic design industry because it could display an image that is not dependent on bitmap, aka pixels, right? And that just kind of blew people's minds because if you think about it, remember I always speak about pixels, and the more pixels you have, and if you want to print and if you want to take a photograph, you have to know, you know, what's the size, how much pixels are going to be in that image. The more pixels is the bigger it's going to be, and we have this formula that we can work it out. So all of those things you would have to consider when dealing with bitmap, right? Because there is a bitmap is finite, meaning you can zoom in, but there will become a point when you zoom in and you will see the pixels, the molecules that make up the image. But for a vector, which was what we're speaking about now, it was not driven by pixels. And that was just like magic, right? So this image that you're seeing here is what goes on under the hood of Illustrator. Illustrator, when you manipulate a line with Illustrator, it is simply showing this is the language that it is speaking. It doesn't speak in little squares and boxes like a raster image or a bitmap. It speaks with a formula. And these formulas is what gives you the output. And the reason why vector doesn't have pixels is because all it needs, this formula simply develops the image. And instead of pixels, it uses these numbers. And the difference with that is that your images will never be limited, meaning you can have a image that is a vector image and you can zoom in forever. You will never see a single pixel, right? So you don't have to consider anything that has to do with image size and how many pixels and how many megapixels and all that stuff because it doesn't use pixels. And that was a kind of revolution that came about for quite a number of years. And this is what you're seeing here now.
And you use this language to describe how to draw the page. The description of the objects are all vectors and curves. The major breakthrough with PostScript is that you could have any size type. You could stretch it and squash it and do anything you wanted to it. It could deal with images, it could deal with graphics, but you had to be a programmer to actually do it. There weren't any applications to drive it. We started development in 1985 of Illustrator.
Mike Schuster was the very first programmer.
What do you guys think of that interface? Does it look familiar? Can you guys recognize any
Looks like
familiar
Illustrator.
elements?
Yes, sir. It looks like Illustrator.
All right, here is the selection tool, the pan tool, and the zoom tool, the text tool. They're all still here. All right. Man, I would not want to be using this computer now.
Programmer on the product. He's clicking and dragging and creating a Bezier curve. I was pretty amazed by that.
It was a direct translation of how people drove PostScript, but you didn't have to program. It would just emit the PostScript code that would make the drawing for you. It gave you very, very precise control, which I knew from Marva's work you needed. You had to have it. When Illustrator went into beta, I wanted to do a drawing that would express something that you absolutely couldn't program. I drew on a piece of tracing paper a picture of a rose, but then I executed it in Illustrator. When people saw that this was the kind of thing that you could do with Illustrator, they just went bonkers. They thought that was fantastic.
It was just
Okay, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead to
We introduced this technology to Time Magazine, and boom! Every infographic at Time Magazine is now being done in Illustrator.
All of the economics of publishing a magazine changed dramatically. And it was really Illustrator and PostScript and the printers and the Mac that started all of that.
Multiple designs could be done in half the time, and production changed completely, so it was a revolution. It can only be equated to perhaps when Gutenberg came up with the printing press.
Hey, do you see it evolving?
Yes, sir.
All right, so I think we're like close to here now, right?
Illustrator, it really has changed the world, and it's changed the way graphic designers work and the art that's been created. And it's absolutely precise and perfect and adjustable.
What people have been able to do with Illustrator is just astounding. Everybody said you're going to ruin good design because now anybody can do it, but the cream rises to the top. The creativity is in the designer. The creativity.
Do you hear that, guys? And this debate we're still having today, like, you know, we already know that being able to draw by hand is the foundation of connecting your expressions directly to your brain. But when you possess the fundamentals of drawing by hand, then knowing the right tool to use based on what you want to do is going to be key, right? You won't be able to just jump into Photoshop and say, you know what, Photoshop is my software of choice and that's what I'm going to use. You have to know that, okay, I'm dealing with line work now, so I'm going to use Illustrator, or I'm dealing with bitmap or pixels or photographs, so I'm going to use Photoshop. You know, I'm doing desktop publishing, so I'm going to use InDesign. This is the kind of mindset that you need to develop. And then you'll find that all of the work that you've been doing by hand, it kind of translates through the use of the right software on screen. And then the world is your oyster. You're now able to, you have more tools at your disposal. You have every single French curve that you could ever conceive of on the computer. But you need to have that fundamental knowledge of how to use a French curve. And this is why in CSA, we kind of start by hand and then work our way up to the computer. And I'm just your guide that's leading you through that transition, right? All right, so we're going to look at some of the work that persons do with Illustrator.
Extraordinary things that can be repurposed and published anywhere is phenomenal.
My Zen time is
the tool that I want to deal with and not the maintenance. As you think it, you can create it.
The idea that you can sit in front of this box and craft extraordinary things that can be repurposed and published anywhere is phenomenal.
My Zen time is when I am just pointing and clicking away and endlessly manipulating Bezier curves. My chosen medium is Adobe Illustrator. It's the thing I feel most comfortable in, and I think I probably wouldn't be doing what I do if I didn't have that as a tool. If you see me hold a pencil, I hold it like a 5-year-old holds a crayon. It's really ridiculous. There's very different ways to work digitally. You can work digitally and still work in a very hand-hewn, handmade human way. Most of the work that I do by hand with lettering is really just part of my process of creating on the computer. My sketches are really just notes, so they don't have to be beautiful. I'll just take an iPhone photo of the sketch, and then I usually just drop that into an artboard in Illustrator to actually get the vector work in there. Daily Dropcap was my first major project that I did that was sort of me putting myself out there and creating something online. I would draw a letter every single day and work my way through the alphabet 12 different times. Dropcaps sort of came from this tradition of illuminated manuscripts. I really thought about all of these letters as being these like illustrative initial caps that you could put into your blog. It got traction almost immediately, and so much came from it. Most recently, this Penguin Dropcaps project in which I'm doing 26 classic books. They created a dream project for me at Penguin, which is pretty amazing.
Right, guys. So did you guys see that? How you worked, okay. How we work with hand and Illustrator. Did you guys notice that?
Yes, sir. It's really cool.
And that is exactly some of what we were doing in our last exercise, where we took a sketch. So if you realize, we've gone 2 exercises so far that we have used source material that comes from a sketch, and we use the computer as a tool to build on top of that. But notice, the source material usually begins from a sketch, because the sketch is still the most direct connection to our brains, literally. So many times, guys, you can think up something, you just need to sketch the beginnings of it. Then you use the computer as a tool to take it to another level. But the idea is that you start it as a sketch. So most of the things that you would get bogged down with, such as using the repeatograph and Prismacolor markers and all that stuff, you get the efficient use of tools. But before you do that, you have to have, you can say, take the rite of passage. You have to know how those tools are used, because the Illustrator and the Photoshop program are based on those tools. If you don't know what a brush is in real life, or brush strokes, it's going to be hard for you to kind of initially comprehend what a brush is in Photoshop or brush strokes. You understand? So this is why it's important that you start with the tangible tool and then you transition to the digital tool to make yourself more efficient. Let's look at another example.
I consider Illustrator my pencil on the canvas. It's how I plan my paintings. I create the basic elements in Illustrator, and then Photoshop becomes the paint on top of those vectors. I tried many different angles and I could just never capture Times Square. And then when these giant printers came out, I realized that was the way to show Times Square. It has to be big like the place itself. The actual perspective was created in Illustrator.
So how this person uses Illustrator and Photoshop is that Illustrator has a perspective tool, right? And he uses Illustrator kind of like a perspective guide to do the line work for the drawings. Think of it as just a hidden line drawing, like a coloring book. And then you take that coloring book into Photoshop and paint on top of it. And like how when you color within the lines, that is what he does. He colors within the lines, but those lines were first created in Illustrator.
And because of the sheer size of it, it actually measures 5 feet on the height and 25 feet on the width. The beauty of Illustrator is that since it's resolution independent, I can work very small and enlarge it without losing any detail. A lot of my scenes are neons and lights, so to have them actually backlit, it really brings out the brilliance of the image. So that's a whole new way of doing things, is light boxes.
All right, let's look at this other use. And if you think about that, guys, whenever you are using, for example, there we go. And there we go. All right. So whenever we're using, for example, Illustrator, let's go to a new page here. All right, there we go. And let's go to a new page here. It comes up on this other screen. There we go. Let's go to print and letter. And let's just minimize that. I mean, what you saw a while ago, if you were drawing something, and believe me, guys, I can't draw to save my life, but if you were drawing something, in his case, he was drawing a Times Square, but if you were trying to draw these lines, and then you wanted to know color within these lines versus drawing those lines over here. So for example, yeah, let's say that you were drawing these lines over here. This mouse. It's not exactly the same thing, but you get it. You can sketch lines in both, but then, because the computer, you might want to zoom in to say, okay, let me color this part properly. The more you zoom in, it's going to be hard, because can you guys see these pixels here that makes up these lines?
Yes, sir.
It's going to be hard for you to paint with this, but then when you're an illustrator and you draw a line, that line remains 100% sharp, which you guys recognized when you were doing the last exercise. So it becomes very precise when you want to paint at a very close level. It always retains that shape. Let's look at this other example.
Illustrator integrates into all of my projects at some point in the pipeline, guaranteed. It is resolution independent. It doesn't matter what size you're working on. You can design for a billboard. You can design for your smartphone. A calligram is an illustration that is made out of type. It's like a mosaic made of words. You're taking the type on a path tool tens of thousands of times per illustration, and everything's vector. The entire illustration, you can zoom in infinitely and you will get down to the smallest piece of type. The Steve Jobs piece is made of the ad that Apple ran in the late 90s. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers. And so I took that copy and the most iconic Steve Jobs look and illustrated him. When I posted this piece to DeviantArt, I thought, I just want to share this with people. In a few days' time, it explodes. Pretty soon the counter's up to like over 100,000 views. The design director of Time magazine sees my illustration of Steve Jobs, and he loves it.
It's been an amazing adventure to look back over these years.
All right, guys. So that is basically the kind of story of Illustrator. Now, I want to kind of just leave a little bit of information hanging so that you guys can go and check it out on your own. You know, every time I do this, some people go and check it out and others just, you know, maybe forget about it. But those of you who really check it out and you start to look into what Illustrator can give you, if you want to do that, just go to the class website. And scroll down. There we go. So under unit 2, manipulate text and images, there is the movie. So you guys can just click on it and watch the full thing at your disposal. At any time convenient to you. All right, cool. So that is that. So that's just a quick look into Illustrator and what it does. In Illustrator, you use path, anchors, and control angles, which is called a Bezier curve, to make adjustments to your line work, right? So for example, when we were looking at this sketch earlier, if you drew this in Photoshop, and let's say you decided, you know what, I want to change this line work a little bit. It's going to be hard to do that because these are like actual like pixels. So, I mean, you can erase it using the eraser tool, I guess. You know, you could like erase that line work there, and then you could use like the brush tool again. Where did I put it? Is it here? Yeah. And then you can redraw that line. But I mean, that's just kind of crazy. Whereas in Illustrator, all you really have to do is just adjust the curve. All right. So, you know, you just adjust that curve however you wanted it. And I mean, so when it comes to line work, it's the undoubted preferred program to use when you need to manipulate line work. Okay, so I'm gonna leave you guys with just one question now. You know, when do you think you would need to use Photoshop? What is the limitation of Illustrator? I mean, if Illustrator doesn't use pixels and you can zoom to infinity, then why isn't it that we're just not using vector for everything? Why is it when we go out and take a picture with our camera, why are we saving it as pixels? Why can't that image be saved as vector? Right? Let me give you guys a try. Do you guys know the answer to this question? What is the limitation of vectors? If it's so awesome. You know, even Superman has his weakness. What do you think?
I think illustration give you a more option to express yourself with lines from the beginning, and then it do allow you to do a lot of photo. Listen, it will allow you to change a lot of properties within the photos that Photoshop would allow you to do.
All right, yeah. That's warm. That's warm, right? When I say answer is warm, meaning cold, meaning it's far. Warm meaning it's close. Hot meaning you hit it right on the head. So that's, it's warm. So that means your answer is mostly right. One of the limitations of Photoshop, I will let you tell me what it is. I have an image here of a Benz, and I have that same image here, well, similar image in Illustrator. Now, who can tell me what is the difference with these two illustrations? One is in Illustrator and one is in Photoshop. Wait, let me turn up the quality of my video so you guys get the best quality possible.
So the pixels can be manipulated easily on Illustrator.
Well, right. Before you go ahead, I would like to say that just like how you don't say bomb on a plane, you don't say pixels on Illustrator. I remember Illustrator don't have pixels. Illustrator has algorithms that determine how something looks. So rephrase that and come again. What was the next one? I think it was Daniel.
I was saying I'm not sure if that the one in Illustrator is real.
I like the direction that your answer is heading, Daniel. Anybody else? Anybody else? Brianna, what's your opinion? When you look at these two images, one is in Photoshop. I have Photoshop on the left, I have Illustrator on the right. What's the real difference between them that you notice?
The lines.
Okay. All right, cool. The lines, though it doesn't really have, let me kind of zoom in, because the lines that you see now are mainly because of a graphical related thing. I need to get it showing me okay. But anyway, all right, cool. But yes, the lines. Actually, that answer is also correct. Okay. In the interest of time, guys, I think maybe Daniel was heading in the right direction when he says, when he started to talk about the realism, right? So I don't know if you noticed, but on the left, this image looks photoreal. Now the image on the right is pretty close. I mean, it looks nice, but it doesn't look photoreal, but it looks very close. And that is one of the limitations of vector images, that vector images doesn't try to be photorealistic because currently it's just not possible. This is why Illustrator is primarily used for logos and cartoon characters and, you know, things that doesn't require it to be photoreal. The next limitation is that, you know, your cameras just cannot capture images in vector. It's just impossible for now, right? There's no camera that exists that when you snap a picture, instead of using pixels, it uses algorithms to generate the light or whatever. That's still science fiction now. So this image on the left is captured with a photograph, and the phone, not to go into any technicalities, but it's able to capture the way that light acts on a subject directly in the camera. Then it can give you a representation of that using pixels. So if we zoom in far enough, we see those pixels showing. But pixels is what makes something looks photoreal. If I zoom in that same section here, there is no pixels, and I can zoom forever, there will be no pixels. There is just line work. And the truth is that in reality, nothing is ever 100% sharp, 100% black, 100% white. Nothing is perfect. Reality is imperfect. And that imperfectness is captured note for note using pixels. And that's why an image with pixels will look more realistic than an image with that is vector. However, you can't edit this image. I mean, it's all you'd have to edit these individual boxes, which is just insane. But in Illustrator, you're able, I mean, everything here is a line. So just like how you have stroke and fill, I could edit every single line that makes up this image. And I could totally screw it up. And this is another type of vector artwork. We used to say that it's done by crazy people because, I mean, people actually sit down and draw all of these lines. I mean, look at these tires here. That's just kind of crazy, right? I mean, this is all a mess in terms of using pixels, but like, look at the crispness of this, and the crispness is good, but it doesn't look real. It looks like a cartoon. So that is just the reality that we are in now. We can get stuff. This is why we call these illustrations, and we might call this a, you know, like a photograph, because an illustration is something you draw from scratch, whereas the photograph, this is just generated maybe from a camera, or you know, it could be our 3D rendering, but it's generated. So there's nothing that can really generate photorealistic vector images. That doesn't, you know, exist. You can convert and do all that stuff, but not to generate. And you know, and that's just how it is. You know, I could take this object here and I could just move it, but I could definitely not do that with a photograph. All right, see, I'm actually just pulling it apart there. All right, guys, so that is our talk on vector and raster images. Our next exercise, which would be on Wednesday, we're going to start that early because that exercise can be a little long. That will be your final exercise in Illustrator, and one that you are going to use in architecture guaranteed many, many times. So that is a very important exercise. The use of it is more important than the grade, guys. All right, so make sure you come out early because we don't want to stay too late for that class, and because it might take a little longer than usual, we're going to start ASAP. All right, guys, are there any questions about vector and raster images? We learned a little bit more about vector today. Is there any thoughts, any questions that you have? Nope. All right. Well, I'm gonna let you guys go now. I'm sure that you guys are sketching away. Remember to watch those pens as you draw. All right. Look out for when it's clogging up, but you don't want it to drip on your drawing. And good luck with your critique. All right. It's probably going to be raining, so please make sure you have something to carry your drawings in. Okay. Very important. All right, guys. Yeah, no problem. So, this is me for today. If there are no other questions in 3, 2, and 1. Nope, no more questions. All right. So I'll see you guys on
The time is 1:01 p.m.
On
Lunchtime.
Wednesday.
All right, so.
All right, cool. Yeah, take it easy.